talking about the American policy, they withdraw so suddenly. And also they could not expect Taliban can take over so soon. And August 31st deadline just came, only a few weeks, and nobody can, for example, my country, Japan, they failed to get people out. And almost 500 or 600 people working for Japanese government left over there.
Oh.
So do you have any, what can I say, opinion or feeling about American way of doing that?
I don't want to go too much into the politics or the whys or wherefores. Mm-hmm. But one thing I will say to you is that in my 20-year experience of being involved in Afghanistan, the one thing I will say to you is that I think the problem was that we did too much telling and not enough listening. We were telling them what they needed, what they wanted, and not listening to what they needed or wanted. If that makes sense to you, so I'm not going to question whether the Americans did right or wrong, or whether this withdrawal was right or wrong, because there are a lot of other people who can answer that better. But as somebody who's worked and been involved with Afghanistan, that's what I think, in my view, is the root of the problem.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind, you have a Muslim background? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if so, I would like to ask you one question. Sometimes, of course, there are prejudice against the Muslim. Not only that, historically speaking, Afghanistan is a typical case because for the first time, British government took over the Afghanistan and colonized it, and then a lot of movement of the government and the kingdom happens, and then Soviet Union, Russian came into. Then after that, a lot of chaos. Then September 11 happened, and then America came. And again, based on that turbulences, people were really suffering so long time. They got lost. Then you say, right, because they cannot just follow the way of Westerners sometimes. I understand that very well. And go ahead.
No, that's exactly the point I was making, is that when I said we did not enough listening, if you think about it, a place like Afghanistan, and you hinted at this earlier, that even within the Taliban, there are factions and different groups. Now, when you've got so many different tribes, when you've got so many different, they've been used to a way of life, a tribal way of life, we can't go in and impose our sense of freedom, our sense of democracy on them. We have to listen to what they want, what they need, and work with that. And you're absolutely right that this was a mistake, that we went in expecting them to become modern and catch up with the 21st century when they were still living in the Middle Ages.
Mm-hmm. And particularly like England or the United States, people talking about democracy or freedom, but of course, they want to have a freedom, I believe, and they want to have a democracy, but it is not a Western style universal idea, which is more like a diversity of the world. And sometimes people consider about diversity internally in the US and the UK or Japan even, but they are not talking about diversity of the world. And that is the kind of problem here. For Afghanistan, it's happened.
Yeah, look, what freedom and what democracy means to individuals is very different in every different place. And that's what we have to understand. I remember when I was working in Radio Television Afghanistan, that there was this huge noise being made about the Radio Television Afghanistan were not allowing female singers on the screen. This is in 2002, 2003. And there was a huge noise in the West being made. Oh God, there's no freedom, there's this, whatever. And I know the Director General of the RTA very well. And I sat down and said, look, the West is looking at this. What do you say? He said, they can say what they like. I know my audience. I can't give them female singers at this moment. They're not ready. But these people are forcing me. But I'm not going to do it.
we discussed about, so-called the universal way of the Western style cannot be working at local area in Asia or many other regions. And so if you continue to say something about it, please.
Yeah, I think if you look at what has happened in Iraq, if you look at what's happened in Syria, if you look at what's happened in Tunisia, Egypt, all of these countries, Libya, where the West has gone in and tried to impose their sense of freedom, their sense of democracy. It hasn't really worked because, you know what, the problem is that to be able to appreciate democracy or the freedom, the first thing you need is education. Yes. You need so once you can't go and impose these freedoms onto a nation that doesn't know how to cope with them or understands them. And all of these countries that we have gone into recently are very, very different. They are very tribal, and you can't, they need strong leaders to control them. I hate to say that. I mean, I was in Iraq a year, 2 years after fall of Saddam, and every single person I met was saying, we want Saddam back. If he was to stand for elections, we would vote for him. You see, this is because for all their faults, whatever they did wrong, and they were not the best of the people, of course they weren't, but they still managed to keep these countries together.
I totally understand, because it is not the style of the Western style, but they need to find out their own way to create their own democracy, right?
Correct. And it might be different for each country.
Yes, exactly. Particularly, this is a saga and also fate of the many countries except for the Western nation, because these 2 centuries, Western style of living is coming into the other area. Everybody needed to follow. And this extreme case is Afghanistan or Iraq, I believe. Then that is a twisted. Am I correct?
Very much so. I mean, even in your own country, in Japan, I mean, the democracy, the sense of freedoms you have, the culture, culture plays a very important role in a democracy, in a freedom. What you might consider to be free in Japan is not something we consider free here, or what they consider to be free in Afghanistan. And likewise,
This is quite a difficult kind of a puzzle, I believe. And maybe, Washim, you may understand that, because maybe Japanese understand what is the problem inside Japan. Afghanistan people, they can understand that what is the problem inside Afghanistan. Iraqi, of course, they know that what was the problem of Saddam. But that is a different thing. If they are imposed Western style of democracy, their reaction is different, even if they know what was the problem, right?
Right. I mean, again, I bring it back to your own experience. You've traveled around the world yourself. I mean, you must have spent time in the US. Can you imagine if the US style of freedom was imposed onto Japan and the Japanese people?
Well, for example, I tell you one contradiction. Of course, still we know that Japanese does not have an equality between man and woman perfectly. And of course, we do not have any kind of, voice of the people can be well recognized by government. No, I don't think so. But if somebody from other country say, hey, Japan, you are behind, or something like this, then reaction is terrible, I believe. You do not know much about our country or culture. First of all, just let us cook. Let us, even, I don't want to say, give me time. Just please understand. We want to create our own style of democracy based on the equality or diversity, whatever.
So, what we've done? What we've done in the last, in this conversation is arrived at exactly what the problem over the last 20 years has been in Afghanistan.
I see. So problem is, if people impose other people so much, then that creates another nationalism. That is really dangerous.
True. That's exactly it. Because then what happens is that these people combine against a common enemy. Because, you know, I lived a lot in Afghanistan, and I spoke to people over the last month or so. And when you speak to people outside of the main cities, they all want the Taliban back because they didn't like what the West was doing. So what happens is that you decide which is the lesser of the two evils, right? So they would prefer the Taliban to the Western democracy. So that's what I come back to my main point about this whole thing, that we did too much telling and not enough listening.
My question is, you were working as a journalist, you know, working with BBC, and you have such kind of comment, you know, in your mind. Then it was really tough time for you sometimes how to make people understood for your concept to the Westerners. Through BBC or something, media.
Yes, yes. I think. Look, I've done. It's for other people to decide those sort of questions, right? I can only offer my observations. I spent most of my last 20 years working with Afghans, working with people in the country, people in Nigeria, people in Pakistan, to help them understand these issues. Because I think the change needs to come from within them. I can only do this, which is to talk to people like yourself and make my views and have discussions amongst friends and colleagues. But I can't change government policy, you know. So this is the way I do it. It is a contradiction that you do feel that you are, you know, that there is a fundamental flaw in the government's policy, in the West policy towards these countries. But, you know, there's others who are paid to deal with those issues. And I come back to, they should do a lot more listening to the people themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And also sometimes, you know, Western journalists, you know, want to tell how people were beaten or how women were suffering. And of course, this is quite a sad news we can see. But on the other hand, you have a comment about how can I say, well, it takes time. And this is a really tough theme that we need to deal with that together.
It will take time. Let's see what happens in the next few months, weeks, few months. Let's see if the Taliban are changed and really do live up to the promises that they're making. And then we'll see what next we can do.
Good. Okay. Yeah, Wasim, thank you so much for your time.
It was an absolute pleasure meeting you. Okay? As we say in my language, inshallah.
Okay. Sayonara in Japanese.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.